Okay, so good afternoon, members and friends. I'm glad to welcome you all today to our webinar today that is hosted by Fiber Connect Council MENA. Our welcome extends to our members and their partners as well. I would like to thank our council member Cross Network Intelligence as well in accepting our invitation and presenting today webinar with an expert speaker talking about crossing the Telecom OSS BSS chasm with Mr. Harinder, Bakhshi, Director of Solution Architecture OSS BSS at Cross Network Intelligence. Harry is a technical leader at Cross Network Intelligence. He has a bachelor degree in biotechnology and a master degree in network technology and management. He spent time with a well-known operator building mobile networks, and he has both sales and delivery experience with equipment and software vendors. Harry drives technical engagement with international customers. Harry is interested in building the most efficient operational management platforms and using analytics, BI, workflow, and a single network inventory to get there. Despite, or perhaps because of 25 years in the industry, Harry still enjoys the challenge of change that characterizes telecoms as it expands to include IT and virtualization in the network. For our attendees, please note that Mr. Harry will answer all your questions once he finishes the presentation. You can type your questions in the chat area. And Mr. Harry, I'm happy to welcome you again today. Please have the full floor. Thank you very much.
Khalud, thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you again. The presentation today is called Crossing the OSS-BSS Chasm. There'll be a few slides, but I will try not to kill you with PowerPoint, and we will switch over to a live demo. I'm planning to run for about 30 minutes, and then there'll be time for questions later. If you think of something in the meanwhile, by all means, put it in the chat. So let's dive straight in. Crossing the OSS-BSS chasm. We're going to talk about the challenge, the solution, have a live demo, and then look at some use cases. So what is the chasm? The chasm really is the connection between BSS and OSS, how to make how to connect the BSS systems to the OSS system. So if you look in TMF terms, you've got product, service, and resource. Now the product, that's very BSS. The resource, that's very OSS. And then in the middle, you've got services. So how do you make that all work together? Well, what's holding the industry back at the moment? Well, there's a real drive towards automation, agile operation. So instead of an operator setting up a circuit for a customer, well, people want zero touch. Instead of an operator tracing faults through different OSSs, the industry wants an immediate root cause analysis. So there's this whole drive towards making the network work as sort of a single coherent whole, especially up towards the BSS layer. So what benefits does that give you? Well, it boosts operational efficiency, it can reduce OpEx, and it can accelerate deployment, because if you take 2 weeks to deliver a service, that's 2 weeks of lost revenue. You can never get back. And what's holding it back? Well, one of the things holding it back is the lack of a single network view. You can't see the whole network, all the resources and all the services, again, using TMF language, in one place. You've got hidden data. So network operators are full of data. There is data everywhere, but most of it is hidden. Most of it is not exposed to the user or the operator or where it's needed. And again, Cross helps overcome that, and we'll show you how. Poor data quality. You could have systems which are 70, 80% accurate. You can have leased lines running where you have your own service. You can have devices that have been added to the network but not put into inventory. You can have devices in inventory that were retired from the network years ago. And again, Cross helps you fix all these things by keeping everything synchronized. And finally, running a BSS at the moment can involve touching many OSS systems just to do a simple workflow. With cross-deployed, you can organize all your data, all your information, your resources and services in one place, and make that available to the BSS through, simple TMF compliant connections. Okay, so that's the chasm, and that's what we're going to do about it. And again, this is just reflecting that. There's BSS, there's OSS, there are the workflows, but how do you connect the two, especially when you have multiple or fragmented OSS systems or hidden data? And this is where CROSS comes in. It fills that gap in. The BSS talks to CROSS, CROSS talks to the OSSs. There's a TMF interface out, so everything the BSS needs should come from CROSS, and then CROSS keeps everything synchronized with the OSSs. So, everything works, everything's in place. Quote from AT&T: the data challenge is about having all the information in a single place. Okay, now this is the most important slide. This is my favorite slide. And if you want one slide that really encompasses CROSS, that just explains what CROSS is doing, well, this is the slide to take away. So what we're doing is we're taking the physical, geographical data. So this could come from PNI, IQGeo, this could come from Excel sheets, this could come from structured data that comes from your fiber provider. But this is the golden thread. This is the underlying network that carries the data. So these are the trenches, the fiber cables, the conduits, the ODFs, the patch panels, the underground boxes. This is all there. And CROSS can accept that data and then link it not just horizontally, but also link it vertically up to the logical layer. So the next layer logically is things like GPON or Ethernet, which is the first sort of transmission layer, which uses the underlying physical and geo base, and that logical layer is connected vertically. So if you have an Ethernet circuit, you know which fibers, which trenches, which patch panels, and which patch cords are used. And then you've got virtualization layers, which is something CROSS we've just started working on. These are things like virtualized inventory for both network with SDN and compute with NFV. And our latest step is to start integrating that so we can connect the physical network to the virtual. And then on top of that, you've got your actual customer and network services. So most customers don't buy a trench, a cable, or a patch cord. Most customers will buy an internet service of some kind. And that's what we connect that service through to all the layers underneath it that provide the service. So if there's a fault at any layer, we can show which services are affected. If you want to do engineering work, we can show which customers will be affected by that engineering work and allow you to plan or move around that. Now, CROSS does this by connecting to the actual live network and also connecting to inventory data, other inventory databases. So we can connect usually via the NMS, for example, to a Cisco or a Sienna network, and we can pull in the structure from those networks. And then what we do is connect it vertically. So if you have a IP circuits running over a fiber circuit, well, we connect the two up so you know which fibers are being used, and so on up the stack until you get to the very top where you might have a TV service, you might have a GPON internet service, and we connect that through. So this is the one slide takeaway, if you like, of what CROSS does. So we take all of these OSS components, and we then provide a single interface out to the BSS. But more importantly, if you have OSS components which are maybe a little old, which don't have a TMF interface, or maybe don't have any REST interface, maybe it's Corba or SNMP, we can link to those, we can populate an inventory, and then we can provide a REST-based open API interface out, and a TMF interface if required. So we can, take those legacy systems and still make them relevant and still build them into modern BSS implementations. Okay, so that's the the main slide. That's the one slide you should take away. How does CROSS differ from other solutions? Well, there are a lot of companies offering federated solutions, and these are great. You get a map, you see all the different resources from all the different OSSs, and you see where they are on the map. So if you're in a location, well, you've got this fiber and this IP and this Ethernet. The data stays where it is, and what you're doing is collecting it together. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't actually show the connections. It doesn't show the vertical integration. It doesn't show what's free on an end-to-end basis. CROSS does capacity management on an end-to-end basis. So if we're looking at capacity for an IP MPLS, we look at the capacity of the Ethernet circuit underneath it. We look at the capacity of the fiber underneath that. So we can do the full management because we have the vertical connectivity. Federation doesn't do that. The assets remain uncorrelated, and it's not enough to really provide the NOC benefits, the management benefits, and the customer benefits that a full integration will do, which is where CROSS comes in. So CROSS does a full integration, and at the bottom, where we have system A, system B, system C, you have a choice about how you do that. In many cases, we're integrating with systems which are going to stay there. They remain the masters. So if you have IQGeo or PNI or some other geographical-based inventory system, that's going to stay as a master. So we synchronize with that on daily, twice daily, 3 times a week basis, whatever's appropriate. Same goes for things like Cisco or Sienna or Lucent or Juniper. Those management systems will stay in place. So we synchronize with those on a regular basis. But you could have other systems which you want to decommission. You may have an old copper planning system you want to decommission. Well, you can do the copper planning in CROSS. You may have Excel sheets, or you may have documentation which is structured but not programmatically available. Well, you can read that into CROSS and decommission that. So there's a choice there. Excuse me. We then make that available northbound through to the BSS systems. So all this integrated information is provided to BSS. So if the BSS wants to know the connection from my house to the exchange, it just says, show me that connection and show me all the sublevels, show me the vertical connectivity all the way down to the trench, and CROSS will provide that, and it'll provide that instantly. We have many connectors already built heading downstream towards the OSS, and we have REST Open API version, the latest version, APIs heading upstream, including TMF APIs. So that's all there and available for you. We have a method called the cross-integration methodology where we integrate this. One question we're often asked is, isn't it difficult to integrate all this data? Well, yes, but if you do it all the time like we do, well, it becomes a lot simpler. And we have a methodology, a documented methodology, which we use to do this work. Data quality is a very important one. Most operators, if they're very, very good, will have 90–95% data quality. So what's reflected and stored in the inventory systems is 90–95% accurate. Most are less than that. So you could be down at 60–70%. So you have inventory systems which are just not up to date. You have elements which have been retired years ago, new elements which are not there, connections which aren't documented, documented connections which don't exist. So what CROSS does is work through that. It tags everything incoming with a quality. 1 is the best, 5 is the worst. And then it can produce reports showing you the areas where you want to focus to improve your data quality. Now, one important thing about CROSS is it's not dependent on perfect information. Your network documentation does not have to be perfect to use CROSS. CROSS will help you make it perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect to start with. So if we want to connect, I don't know, from London to Cairo, we can build a connection from London to Cairo with nothing underneath it. And we can still use that connection, if it's an Ethernet connection, to build IP MPLS and things on top of. But then as we find the information, the underlying fiber connection information underneath that connection, we can add it. So whatever the state of the network, we can work with it. We do not demand perfect information, but we do help to make it better over time. Okay. So what CROSS is doing is providing a single source of truth about the service and resource domain. So in TMF speak, the resources that make up the network and the services that run over those resources. We're looking at, everything that's there. You don't have to put everything into CROSS, but you should put everything that makes sense. And we'll obviously help you do that. And then once you've got all that in one place, you've got an end-to-end model of the entire network. You've got, you can set bi-directional queries. You've got service assurance and service impact analysis. So if there's a fault, you can see how that affects services. Through root cause analysis, you can look at capacity management. So when we manage capacity through the stack. If you want to set up an IP service, well, we can check all the way down through to the fiber that capacity exists. Okay, and then once you've got all this information in one place, well, what can you do with it? Well, we offer IP pooling, so we can set IP addresses, we can do number planning, and then we, as I said before, we can look at the service root cause analysis and the service impact analysis, and we can say, right, well, if you want to change the resource, if you want to do planned engineering for these services, well, for this object, these services will be affected. And you can do that instantly because it's all in one place. When I worked in a NOC, to trace the connection took 3 to 4 hours. That's the time we were given, 3 to 4 hours, because we were tracing a radio connection to a base station. We were tracing that through a VLANs, we were tracing that through fiber to site, we were tracing that through DWDM, we were tracing that through fiber. So it was quite a complex process. Well, CROSS will show you that instantly, just in a few seconds. And it's a huge time and resource saver. Okay. Again, this is just repeating ourselves, but it's the connection CROSS there is the data bridge. It's bridging between the business support systems and the OSS network management systems. It's REST-based open API, and again, now we have TMF compliance as well. And it's there to provide that single place to hit for all the data. That doesn't mean you have to big bang your BSS. If you have systems that work well, keep using them. But you can use CROSS to build a platform for development for the future, to pull all that information in. You can use CROSS if you have OSS systems that are getting to end of life and you need to retire them, but you still need to do what they did. Again, that's what CROSS will help you. And we'll support workflows. Workflows are automation. And the one thing about automation is you must have good information. If you want to automate something, your information must be up to date, current, it must be up to date, it must be accurate. And that is, again, where CROSS works. And we can work across workflows to deliver that. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over and show you CROSS itself. We're going to have a little bit of a demo. I've got a BSS system that we use to sort of work with CROSS to demonstrate some of the facilities. So let's switch straight over to that. Okay, so within this demo, we have got a geo base. So the physical base, the fibers, the trenches, in this case have come from small PNI. We do support other systems, but we're using small PNI. This application is called TSM, Telco Service Management, and I'll give you a very quick tour, a 2-minute tour in a second. And this has the service catalog, the product catalog. It does the workforce management, and it does all the BSS functions. And sitting in the middle is CROSS. So what CROSS has is it has that underlying physical network. It provides the data through to TSM, but what it has is it pulls all that information together, all the resource and service information together into one place and makes it available. So TSM doesn't need to talk to the PNI. It doesn't need to talk to the GPON system to build the GPON circuit. CROSS does all of that. Okay, giving TSM just a simple connection through to achieve everything. So the easiest way I can explain this is if I as a consumer want a connection for GPON to my hub, TSM does not need to worry about the GPON network, about the fibers, about anything else. It just tells CROSS to build that circuit, and CROSS will go and do that. Let's go and look at some of this stuff rather than talk about it. So the very quick overview of TSM, it's a BSS that I'm using for this demo. We actually sell it, and it's very good for medium-sized companies. It's got a full CRM. It's got an ordering flow, which we'll see. It's got ticketing. You can maintain inventory. You can do stock management, and you can build your products. So a product in a TMF sense is something you sell. And this is a marketing function. So you build a product, you say, right, we want fixed internet. And what's that made of? Well, there's the tariffs, the hardware, the value-added services, the fees, and you pull all these things together. So fixed internet, there's different tariffs available, and these all become products. And underneath these products are the services and resources, which is what CROSS documents. Okay, so all of that can be done through TSM. So within TSM, the first thing you do is you would go in, and this would be a customer zero-touch portal. You would say, right, can I get a service? So I'm going to put in my address, and yes, that's an address we serve, and this information is shared between the BSS and CROSS. So click on that, search, and these are the services available to me. So from here, I can go and place an order. Now, just to save a bit of time, I'm going to look at one I did earlier. So here's an order, and we will go with this one. And we will look at that whole flow. Okay. So when an order is placed within TSM, the service and the product inventory is created, documentation is created, and we wait for a customer confirmation. As soon as a customer confirms, he clicks on the email saying, yes, I confirm. Then we deploy the material template to CROSS, we create the PON, and we do the service design. So these are the elements that the BSS sends to CROSS to do as an OSS. So let's go over and look at those. So this is CROSS. When you first see CROSS, you see this screen. This is the dashboard, and these are the different modules. The ones we're going to look at today are location, circuit, insight, and service impact analysis. Briefly just talk about other modules. Synchro is how we pull data in. So if you want to set up a master, if you want to connect to PNI or Cisco or Sienna regularly, well, Synchro is how we would import that data. IP address pooling, configuration, CROSS is very configurable. So if you're a solution provider, you can configure CROSS for your customers. If you're a customer, you can configure CROSS for yourself. We do radio, we can import coverage maps, and we can show base station functionality and base station connectivity. Now let's go and look at circuit. So the circuit I want to show you is this. It's a circuit from an exchange through to a home. And we can zoom in, and CROSS is layer-based. So we can choose the layers we want. So I can zoom in on just the PON part, which is here. So there's a PON part and a long-distance part. There's a connection from this home through to exchange, and then there's a long-distance connection to the remote exchange. But how does that actually flow? Well, we can look at the trenches, the conduits, the cables, the PON paths, and the PON links. So now we've got a fully featured view of how we get from here across to Basingstoke. And it follows this PON path, which is made up of these three PON links. Okay. But if we want to see that path very explicitly, so here it is. At the moment, it's just showing the logical route. But we want to see it explicitly as a physical route. We can do this, which is open the full circuit. So in the routing up here now, we see everything. We see that Ethernet, okay, which is that long distance connection, but we see every connection, every link, every fiber, every patch cord, every conduit. And what we also see is if something's missing. So here for this part of the service, we have a missing link. And we can scroll down and it will show you that link. So the link between here and here is not set. And if we click on that, it'll tell us where that is, and we can go and fix that, or we can do something with that information. But now we can see that that circuit, instead of just going directly, we're showing the exact path. We're showing exactly what's involved in building that circuit. Okay, and exactly which equipment it touches. So that's one of the things CROSS does. This is that virtual connectivity. Now, what can we do with that information? Well, if we go back into TSM, we can see now that we've built the service, it's been activated, someone's gone out in the field and activated it, and there's a very good scheduler in TSM you can use to manage your workforce, which perhaps is something we should do on another webinar. It's generated documentation, and it's sent the customer service satisfaction survey. So from a product perspective of commissioning the service for a customer, the customer is live, and this can be done in minutes. And if there's something missing, well, you'll be alerted immediately to go and fix that, to get that done, to minimize the time taken to make that product live. So as well as this is a circuit view, we have a location view. So this is the location of this exchange. We can see all the different equipment in all the different layers there. So we have fiber equipment in the ODF. So this is fiber termination, fiber welding. We have SDH, we have IP. Now, this IP information has come from somewhere totally different to P&I. This has been imported, and it's imported and it's come in as Cisco ASR 9Ks. We can also, if you're interested, we can go to connectivity, and that gives us both the fiber welding, which is a connection of external fibers to ODFs, and the internal patching. So we've got that full mix, that full blend of everything connected to everything to build up the connectivity. And then also from here, because everything's connected, so I'll go back to circuit in a second and I'll show you, but from here you can see, well, on this physical equipment, what circuits are supported, and you can navigate through that way. Similarly with circuit, you can see all these little drop downs. So these tell you what's connected where, okay? And you can go to the physical infrastructure. So if I go here and I go location from that extra exchange, you can see the breadcrumb trail leading down to that, and then from there you can see the circuit. So there's a full documentation and the full connection. So now I want to show you something called Insight, just very quickly. Now, Insight is a 360-degree view around an object. In this case, the object is a link. Here is that link. It's an IP/MPLS link. We can see the start point. We can see the end point. We can see the consumer. And if I click on the consumer, that becomes a central managed object. We can see the providers of that, start point and end point. And again, I can keep doing that. Now, the PON is a central managed object. We can see the start point, we can see the end point, we can see the consumers, and we can see the providers. So if I click on the PON path, it has 3 PON links, as you'd expect, and so on. So this is a huge time saver in NOC operations. You can take a service. We started at a top-level service, and we've drilled down, and we can see exactly who the providers are. And the other thing we can do, we're looking at a link, is we can switch over to a node. And from the node, we can see the links that are routed over it, the links that terminate it, the parent, and the child.
Exterminate.
Sorry about that. My speaker just came to life for some reason. And we can do that. And here we can navigate sideways, so we can see the port. The port has a parent, which is a card. The card has a parent, which is a slot. And all the time you see the routed links that go through that central managed object. So that's all I wanted to show you in Insight. But it is an enormous time saver, and really just pulls all the database information together into one place for an operator to look at directly. I want to take you through to SIA, Service Impact Analysis. So we can subscribe to alarms. We're not an alarm handler, but we can subscribe to alarm topics. And we can then, from those, build a fault tree. So in this case, we have this WMS optical multiplex section, and we've declared it a root alarm. And we've declared it a root alarm because it has subsidiary alarms. So these are the services impacted. So we can see for this optical multiplex section here, these are the services that are affected. So these are the customers you better go and talk to. Similarly, we could actually just go and look at services, and we can see what's, they're carried on if you want to do planned maintenance. And we can also see sub-alarms. Okay, so this alarm is a sub-alarm of this optical multiplex section. Now let's go and open that as a circuit. And there we go. There's that circuit. And if we look at the schema, we can see it's alarming. Okay, but yeah, we've got 3 big links here, but yeah, there's got to be more than that. Show me the rest of the information around this. Well, that's easily done. We just expand all. Okay, and now we see the exact route through the trunking all the way through for that service, and all the connections, as I showed you earlier, the trenches and the connectors, the Ethernets and everything else. So we're looking at an Ethernet. We could look at consumers. Okay, and we can also go to any point here, and we can right click and we can say show me the services. So I can see all the services using that link. So if I want to do planned maintenance, I know the customers that will be affected of the planned maintenance. But let's go back to the schema now, and you'll see it's a much bigger schema. This is that Ethernet link that's alarming, and here's the root cause. Okay, it's the WDM. So if you go here, you can see that there's the WDM, there's the Ethernet, there's the impacted services. So we pull all that information in, and because we have this fully connected data model, we can provide this information instantly. I want to show you something else as well. So here we've got an underground route alarm 77809. What we can do is we can take the services affected by that and forward it to BSS. So if I go to tickets and I see Joe Harris here has a problem, it's an internet outage. So let's go and look at it. Well, here it is. It's a minor internet outage. He's phoned through and told us. So ticket create from incoming call. But what we can also do is say, right, we can provide information back on the customers affected by a fault. So here's that 77809 underground route. The customer's been affected. So when the customer phones in with to create a ticket, you can automatically, the system will automatically correlate that with the existing ticket for the sort of network fault. And if you click on that, you can see everyone that is affected by that network fault, which is also there in CROSS. So there is this sort of full connection through, connection with the BSS. I think for the moment, that's all I really want to show you. I've shown you the location, the circuit, insight, and the service impact analysis. And I think for a short webinar, that's probably enough. So let me switch back over to our presentation. Okay, so we've built the single coherent data model. We've put the assets and relationships in context. We can improve the data quality and integrity. Let me see if that's in this presentation. I can't remember if I've built that into this one. Yes, it's not in this one. But basically what it does is for the connection name, it'll give you a quality. And that quality is based on what we ingest. So if all we know is it goes from one city to another city, that's quality 5. Quality 4 would be location to location, quality 3, rack to rack, quality 2, network element to network element, and quality 1, perfect quality, would be logical port to logical port. So depending on the quality of the data we have, we can display that here. And we can accelerate order and service management because everything's instantly available. So you've seen all that and you've seen it in action. So what are the use cases, benefits? What's the summary? We can consolidate all the inventory network data into one place, and this can come from many disparate systems. The information can come from NMSs, it can come from Excel, it can come from other databases, other sources of information. We can improve the data accuracy and integrity because we constantly do this. We're constantly updating the information, and then we can tell you when there's a problem. So every day we ingest, we run a delta check, we check we have the information. If necessary, we can do an audit, so we can check, has the information for an object changed? So has the management IP for something changed? If it has, then we can alert the operator, or we can automatically change it. So we make sure that things like IP address changes, which are common, are caught and they are documented and they are available for the BSSs to use in automation. We put assets and relationships into context. We allow you to scale the inventory. Now, I haven't talked much about how CROSS is deployed, but CROSS is deployed on the cloud typically. We can still do on premises if you want, but typically it's deployed in a scalable way on the cloud, and we use cloud scaling functionality to scale CROSS as appropriate for the size of your implementation. We provide a platform for accelerating workflows, and we reduce costs by making all the information available in one place. Okay, so one of our customers really gave us these numbers back of the savings they made with CROSS. Lease line optimization, that's when you're paying for a lease line, but you have your own service that goes there. And sometimes you just don't know it because you don't see the two on the same place. Well, now you do. Service and maintenance, energy costs, we can track utilization. Now that utilization can be Ethernet capacity and fiber capacity, but it can also be the air conditioning capacity or power capacity. We can track it hierarchically. So if you know the power capacity to a building, we can take out the capacity for a room, for a rack, for a network element. And we can track all of that and provide reports on it. The real big 75% saving is just in the time to do the service impact analysis, to do the root cause analysis. And that brought, in this customer's case, the time down from 2 weeks to 2 days. And that is exactly what we expect CROSS to do. And you'll get huge savings from that. And also, not only savings, but much, much happier customers. Okay, so we've been around for about 10 years now. Our parent company has been around for much longer. We've got people from various different companies, and we've got various partnerships. So personally, I came from Ericsson. Before that, I worked for Vodafone, and before that, I worked for Tellabs. So that's my industry experience. At Tellabs, I was very much in the fiber side. At Vodafone, it was mobile deployment and bringing 4G live. And at Ericsson, it was OSS. So that's my history. My boss was managing director for one of the small world countries, and now works for, now runs CROSS. We're partners with GE. We have, lots of connections and lots of experience. Okay. So we started off with, a single project to build for one of our parent company's customers, and then we productized the whole inventory system, and now we sell it throughout Europe and the Middle East. So we have customers in Africa, they're based in Barcelona, but they run data centers across Africa. We have BNet in Bahrain, we have TET, which is in Latvia. We have Aquacoms, which runs undersea fiber networks, primarily US to Europe. We have an Nexera in Poland, Global Connect in Denmark. So that's our sort of footprint and portfolio. We're a medium-sized, actively growing company, which I think a pretty unique and valuable contribution to make, thing to offer you. Okay, those are successful deployments, which I've just talked about on the last slide, so I won't make again, but there we go. And that's it for the presentation. So thank you. It's been 40 minutes. I appreciate the time you've given to me. I hope you found it a little bit educational, a little bit enjoyable, and a little bit entertaining. So thank you again for joining. Khulud, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hari, for this interesting presentation, actually. So, Mr. Hari, we have one question from Ravi. I see that there are a lot of network automation initiatives driven by network equipment vendors. How do you see the helping in OSS, BSS, chasm? Do you see traditional automation players like RPA, orchestration players having a role any more in the area?
Yes, I do. You are going to have automation, which is driven by a vendor, but what tends to happen is that automation tends to be very horizontal. So it will deal with that vendor's equipment, maybe a little bit to either side. But where traditional orchestration vendors come in is when they work with a BSS and you want to do an orchestration or an automation which crosses multiple layers and multiple technologies. As I showed you with Cross, it is a multi-layered orchestration because you are commissioning at the GPON level, you're identifying missing fibers, but you're also building up to the service level and the IP/MPLS level. And again, the actual orchestrator used by TSM in that example is, forgot, Camunda. It's Camunda orchestrator. It's a very generic orchestrator. So yes, absolutely. I see the generic orchestration vendors still having a big place to play, especially if you want to build complex orchestrations across many layers.
Okay, so we have another comment from Dr. Banu saying self-maintenance network capability. And we have also
Okay. I'm going to switch my camera off because you're breaking up, Khulud. I don't know if it's my bandwidth, but for the self-maintaining network, I mean, that's the, let me just check. Khulud, can you hear me? Hello, can anyone hear me? Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so I've lost Khulud, but I will keep talking. So self-maintaining network, well, this is, there's lots of golden eggs that people want to get to. There's lots of things people want to do. So zero-touch provisioning, self-provisioning networks, and then self-maintaining networks. So networks recognize a fault and they fix it themselves. Now, I mean, the easiest way to talk about this is things like IP and IP/MPLS, where you do have a reroute, you do have the path is healed automatically. You can do this in DWDM as well, automatic healing. So how do we support that? Well, it's important when these events occur that you know about it. When I worked in a NOC, we could have MPLS switches and we could just not know. We could not know that the traffic had switched onto a different path. Because of the consistent connection Cross maintains with the network, we will tell you when these changes happen. We will give you an up-to-date inventory and documentation of a self-maintaining network. You don't want to stop the networks doing this. You don't want to stop MPLS reroute. You don't want to stop DWDM switching on failure. You want these to happen automatically because it automatically means quickly, but you want them to be documented and documented by more than just an alarm. And that's what Cross will do to support it. So that's the self-maintaining. Now, the next question I've got is the requesters of Cross have their own BSS and OSS. Please explain the general merge plan of Cross. Okay, that's a very good question. So Cross is a sort of B/OSS. Okay, so we merge with underlying existing OSSs. So you could have Huawei, which in your region I know would be very popular. You could have Cisco, you could have Juniper, you could have Ciena. You could have all of these systems underneath it. And then as well as that, you can also have your GL planning, so PNI or IQGeo, or somewhere where you do the physical planning. Now, those are all OSS. Those are all independent of Cross. And what Cross is seeking to do is pull them together into a single inventory so you can see those vertical connections. We do that through these adapters, through these probes. And these are written to work with our Synchro module. So probably a brief explanation of Synchro. Synchro is what we use to synchronize data into Cross, to ingest data into Cross. Now, as part of that, we have a sort of an ingest format called datex, which is how we provide data to our database. We do a delta check. does this object exist in the database already or not? We do an audit check. Optionally, we do an audit check. If this object exists, has the information changed? And if it has, we can either fix that automatically or we can provide that information to you. And then what Synchro does, because we have to get this information into Datex, we have probes. Now, these probes talk to the outside world, to the OSSs. So they will talk to Excel, they will talk to Sienna, Cisco, Huawei, and they will pull the data in from those systems, from a database, from a structured text, from files, from whatever. And it'll map it into Datex and push it into Synchro for the other processes. So that's what it does. That's what Synchro does. So we synchronize with OSSs, and sometimes we take over their function if they're coming end of life. So that's one thing. Then the next thing is, how do we talk to the BSSs? I showed you our BSS. You don't need our BSS. We have standard REST-based APIs. You can connect to your own BSSs. So if you have a BSS provider, if you have a current BSS, then that's fine. And most of our implementations are not done with TSM. I mean, that's a minority of implementations. Most of our implementations are done with other OSSs and other OSS providers. So how do we merge with those OSSs and BSSs? We merge with the OSSs through probes, and these can be APIs, this can be database connection, this can be flat file, or anything we can programmatically read. How do we merge with BSSs? We merge with BSSs through APIs primarily. We can export information, we can report and export information if that's what you wish, but primarily we integrate through APIs and programmatic connections. Okay, I don't know, Khulud, are you back?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, perfect. So I guess that's it from the questions. Sajida, she mentioned Mr. Nasiri and Mrs. Najafizada. I hope that I'm pronouncing the names correct. And we are also our pleasure to have them and to have all the attendees today. So at the end, Mr. Hari, we can't thank you enough for this wonderful presentation and all the solutions that you presented today. And I also want to thank Mr. Peter for arranging this webinar with the Fiber Connect Council, Mina. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our attendees. We will send you the recorded webinar link, and we will post it on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Mr. Harris, so much, and looking forward to have more webinars with Cross and other members also.
Thank you, Khulud, for organizing it. Thank the council for facilitating our participation, and most of all, thank everyone for giving me nearly an hour of your time to listen to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.